Hey guys, if you've ever picked up a knife and wondered to yourself why the handle scales don't go all the way to the edge of the knife, this is the video for you. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make floating handle scales, all the tasks involved to do it correctly, and more importantly, the why. Why would you float handle scales on a knife? This project was inspired by a gorgeous piece of pattern welded Damascus. That's why I've chosen to do stock removal. I don't want to disrupt the pattern by forging this blank to shape. I use this technique often where I freehand the knife and I hold it up to check against the drawing that I've come up with. I've gone ahead and run the profile all the way around. I'm going to drill some holes here. This first hole was for a lanyard, and I actually think that that was a mistake that I made on this knife. I won't do that next time, and you'll see why later on in the video. In order to float your scales, you're going to want to go ahead and put layout dye all the way around the knife, all the way around the perimeter, because you're going to give yourself a set of scribe lines completely around the knife. Now on the side profile of the knife, I'm creating a grind to line here. So I have a line on the side profile and a line on the top. Now as I approach the grinder, I'm going to grind that small section of material off all the way around the knife on both sides to create a perfectly symmetrical bevel. And this is going to create a nice rounded spine on the entire profile of the knife. Let's go ahead and do the rough grind on the bevels before heat treatment. I prefer to freehand grind my bevels. I do use a plunge line jig that I clamp down on the blade, and that basically just gives me a reference of where to stop each time that I come back to the platen. And it gives me nice crisp lines at my bevel. After I go ahead and grind these bevels in, I'll cut in a sharpening choil right here and then stamp in my maker's mark. I like to cold stamp my maker's mark. It gives me nice crisp lines. Let's fire up the forge and get this thing heat treated so I can teach you how to float those handle scales. I'm going to manually pass this blade back and forth because my forge doesn't heat extremely evenly. I've since actually gone to installing a tube inside of my forge, which gives me a much more even heat. And in for the quench. I got kind of fancy with the camera on the quench here. Did a slow-mo reverse shot and then back into the quench. This is my favorite part of knife making, is the quenching. Well, maybe the handle making is my favorite part. Let's go ahead and get it sanded up. I'll go to 500 grit with this, and then we're going to toss it into the ferric chloride to make that Damascus pop out, and you'll get to see the pattern. We've gone ahead and sanded this all the way around. I've radiused the edges all the way around, which was super easy. You saw how I did that on the grinder earlier. Let's toss it in my ferric chloride and distilled water mixture. It's about a 50-50 mix. I toss it in here for about 30 seconds, pull it out, use 4/0 steel wool to clean up all the way around, put it back in, and I do this about 10 different times. And while I'm doing this, I use the time to go ahead and clean up the shop. There it is. Holy moly, what an amazing pattern. Now you can see why I didn't want to disrupt the pattern by forging it. Here's my scale material. We're going to go ahead and cut out the rough profile on the bandsaw. We're going to drill the holes, locate the pins on the blade, push the pins through so that the two pieces of material stay true to each other. Here you can see I've taken a piece of masking tape and created a quick template off of the blade. We're going to go ahead and cut this out. Here's another cool jig that I made where I just located my pinholes on a piece of 2x4 so that I could apply it and do my finish sanding. Glue up those scales, and the only thing that you have to do is grind off the pins. Now you can see I used masking tape to protect the entire blade so that I don't make any nicks or anything. And look at those scales. Now it is important that you finish the sides, front, and back of these scales, because once they're on the blade, you can't go back and sand them. That's why I created the 2x4 jig with the pinholes, so that you can place your handle scale on the 2x4 and sand all the way around before you actually apply it to the blade. The other thing that's extremely important is when you glue these handle scales onto the blade, when you clamp them down, you're going to need to take acetone and clean the excess glue squeeze out all the way around the perimeter on both sides. Now here's the why. Do you see the gorgeous Damascus pattern? I wanted to showcase that pattern as much as possible on this knife. So I rounded the spine over so you could see how the Damascus cruises right through the blade. You could see the cool twisted pattern there on the spine of the knife. And I brought the handle scales in from the perimeter of the knife so that you could just really see the Damascus. Now here's where I told you I made a mistake earlier. I wish on this particular knife that I had not drilled the lanyard hole, because I would have been able to extend the handle material all the way to the back of the knife and then drop it down into that little drop down section. I think it would have been a little more aesthetically pleasing. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Would you have done that also if this project was in your shop? Here's a link to a video that's going to teach you how to do really cool wood inlays. I highly encourage you to go over there and check that video out next, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time.